Okay, we've got the front bands already cut out and pinned together at the center front, and we're going to stitch the center front together at 1/4 of an inch, or 6 millimeters. And oh, does not like my fabric. Okay, how can I fix this? Well, I'll start at the other end. And I'm actually not going to start right at the end. I'm going to start a little bit in the end and then go backwards. I'll fix it down at this end. And, so I probably shouldn't have gone for a back stitch. That's okay. It's exactly how it's supposed to be. We're going to just need to press this open, and I can do that over at the iron. Make sure your iron is not too hot, otherwise you will be melting your fabrics together. And you can also do a top stitch if you would like on that. So we have our back is going to be attached to the front. So I'm going to go ahead and get these pinned. And again, we do not need a back stitch on here. We're going to be sewing over it a few times. So what I should probably do is get some thread, some long thread, so I can actually kind of force it to go through. You can also use tissue paper if for some reason your fabric is not wanting to go through. Got a 1/4 here. Okay. And my foot on this machine is at 3/8 of an inch, 10 millimeters. And my fabric stretched a little bit. That's okay. Okay. It's not the end of the world. My fabric stretched. Okay. So I probably want them to stretch the same direction. So I'm going to start sewing at the top and go to the bottom. We can put a little bit of boning casing on this if you want. Okay, now we're going to have elastic up at the top. And I've got some here. And we want to have it so you've got your right side. Oops, it's now the wrong side. Yeah, your right side is facing it. And I'm also going to be just doing a zigzag on this. I'm not pulling on this at all. I must have a caught thread somewhere. I think on the bottom. And then we can fold this back. And of course I still did the elastic. Did I do it? No, I did it right. Okay. I gotta do this side. Okay, so we did not do a lining for this. We actually just fused this. So we have a raw finish up here. So I'm actually just going to finish this off with a little bit of this elastic as well. Trim that. So this is the fitting band that we are sewing. We did not do a full lining on this one. Certainly the instructions show you to do that. I'm going to show you how to do the casing basically in two different ways on each side. For this one, I did make my seam allowance a little bit wider. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line this up to, it doesn't matter which side it is. We're going to do this before we do the elastic. So if we do, basically this is 3/8 of an inch, and we did our seam allowance at 3/8 of an inch. Now if we sewed it right at that 3/8, then when we go to sew a cup, we'll actually be sewing right on top of the channeling. So the reason I did that extra bit is so we can have kind of a little bit of an overlap. So I'm going to get my machine going, make sure no zigzags on it. And I'm going to just start sewing on my casing. That way I kind of get that just started. Get my needle down in the machine, and then I'm going to line this up. So I've got about 1/8 of an inch on the edge. So we've got to be real careful. Now I like doing it on this side, that way I make sure I line it up, but you may find it easier to do it on the other side. Because obviously I do not see the edge of the casing to make sure I'm sewing it on the edge. The only guide I have is the one that's over here. And this may end up stretching the wire line out just a little bit. When we go to sew the cup in, we may have to do a little bit of easing in. But right now, our main concern is to test if the band fits. Okay, back stitch. No, I didn't do that at the other edge. Okay. Come on, there we go. So I did it so that soft side, when we end up flipping it in to test it, it will actually sit soft against the skin. The other side, we're going to sew this on after we attach the elastic. So I would encourage you to watch the entire video to determine which way you actually want to attach it, because you might find one way easier than the other. Okay, so now I'm going to get my machine on zigzag. And I am going to be stitching so on the right side. And I'm going to line my elastic right to the edge of the fabric. And we want to be trying to sew consistently on this side because we're going to be flipping this over. I am not stretching my fabric or my elastic at all. Now because it is a little stretchy, we can flex it around the curve. So you're going to kind of see how I'm doing it. A little bit at a time. If you find it easier to basically hand baste it or pin it first, you're welcome to. So now I'm going to go up to, and we actually have a peak up here. So I'm going to slowly go, I'm going to walk it so I'm right about my center point, and then I'm going to take it out. we can do this overlap a couple different ways. I'm actually just going to kind of take it to the edge over here and clip it. And then we're going to sew on the other side. So this, I would recommend pinning. Let's see if I have a pin. I'm going to pin this one out of the way. And then I want to make sure I have about the same amount in there. And don't worry about getting it right to the exact point of the overlap. We can always go back and clip threads. I'm not doing any back stitch right at this point. Now I'm doing this in black thread so you can actually see exactly what I'm working on. So you can see that it has kind of an overlap here. We then want to fold this back. I'm going to put a couple pins in. Let me get my pretty pin cushion. So we kind of fold it back in a few places so you can see what it's going to look like. I'll show you in the front in just a moment. Okay, so if you look, when we try and just kind of fold this back, we're going to end up with like a little pucker in here. So what I'm going to do is, since I did a seam right here, I can actually unpick a few of the stitches. If you actually, if this is all one piece, you're going to want to basically slice into the fabric up to about where I'm going to show you. Okay, let's see. Might be seam ripping a few stitches here. Probably should have done that without them. There we go. And we want to basically take them out to about where the stitches are going to be. Did I probably just cut my fabric. Yeah, that's okay. You're not going to be able to see that. I'll fix it. Okay, so what we can do here is basically fold it under. I'm not too concerned that I just cut my fabric here. So if you look, we end up having, they both tuck under. Put a pin in there. And then on this side, we can actually just go in and hand stitch these together, or you can take it and sew it right up to the casing. I am just going to leave this here. I'm not going to cut anything off yet. And I am going to do another zigzag stitch to hold this down. And I am going to stretch it just a little bit so I don't get any puckers in my fabric, and I probably put my pins in the wrong direction. I'm only doing a minimal amount of stretching just because I don't want any puckers in my fabric. Okay, now right there at the center, I'm going to pivot it and come back this direction. Okay, it looks pretty good. Now I have this up here. I am just going to clip that one. I'm just going to clip them both. It may come unraveled, so you might want to go in and just kind of stitch around the edges there. Okay, so now we've got the band elastic on. The way you can do the other casing is going to be directly on here. So now we know we have that 3/8 inch seam allowance. So what we're going to do is we're actually just going to stitch this seam allowance. We're going to stitch this right down to where it would be sewn. So then when we sew the cup on, we're just sewing the fabric over here. So I'm going to basically kind of guide it. Let's see. Oh wait, no zigzag. Okay. So for here, we're going to sew on both sides of the casing. And this needs to be basically on the outside or the inside edge of that 3/8. And beauty about the casing is that it's kind of flexible. And so you can see why we actually had to do this one last, is because it goes right on top of the elastic. And I'm also got to be careful that I'm not sewing too much into the casing, because if I am, then I won't be able to get the wire in. I'm going to do a second row on the other side of the casing. And this is a little easier because I don't have to really guide it, I just have to guide the machine. Okay, so two different ways to get the casing on there. Okay, so I can turn off my machine right now. And what we're going to do is we're going to insert the wires like this. So over here, because this one is where it's supposed to be, we're going to put this in between that channel and slide this in. Okay, there we go. So there's that one. We can test to make sure the wire's sitting in the right place. Now on this one, we're technically going to be trying it on with this casing flipped. So because of that, I'm actually going to insert this with it flipped in this direction already. Because now it's actually where it's supposed to be. And it'll be a lot easier than trying to flip it around later. So you can see that if we were to end up sewing this down, it would be on top of that elastic. So there's two different ways to do it. This way we can test that the wire fits us first, And the casing should be in the exact same spot on both sides if we sewed this correctly. I am going to, now actually I have to do a few more things. But basically this part is done. And actually I don't have to take the wires out for this next bit anyways. I need to put the elastic on the back neckline and then my hook and eye. Okay, now I'm going to put my hook and eye on, and I'm looking, I'm like, wait, this is actually, the hook and eye is smaller than my back. So I need to make sure that when I sew this, that this is going to be the same size. So I'm just going to take, and I'm going to mark right now with a pin, and I know I need to cut that off. I need to basically have my backs, my scissors are a little magnetic. And I need to trim that bit off right at the center back. And I'm just going to take it into my curve. So I'm going to do that again over here in case maybe it was something I did in cutting, and nope, I did. And it's just that the hook and eye was, the pattern was designed for a different size hook and eye. So, okay, trim that down to match there. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to have the hook and eyes, and just hit my camera, my head on the other camera. Not used to on my workspace. So I'm going to use a little bit of this white elastic. I had some slightly stained, and I'm going to take about this many, about maybe 8 inches or so. Something like that. And that should be enough to work with. Put the other away. So what I want to do is I actually want to sew this so this white edge is right on the edge. And I believe the patterns are designed that we would actually have a little bit of an overlap. But because I'm using a different hook and eye, I'm just going to make this change on the spot. Because I know that where I just cut that casing, or the power net, that's exactly where I need the edge to be. So I'm going to take, and I'm going to get this back onto zigzag. And I'm going to line up the edge of my elastic with the edge of my power net, and I'm just going to sew around it. Okay, and then I'm going to do a second row right next to it on the other side of the elastic. And this will just hold it in place, and obviously you would be using a thread that might be a slightly better color, but I'm doing this so you can see it. Oh, I really want to get my machine fixed. Okay, there's that side. And I'm going to do this side. And I know I've got a little bit of room there, so I'm going to start over at this side, right at the edge. Go again. And I don't know if you can really tell, but it kind of did a little bit of curving when I went in there, and it's all going to stretch anyway. So basically I've got the strap on there. What we're also going to do is we're going to put a little loop over here, and I will get that. And okay, I'll go grab that right now. I have got a whole bag of hardware. This is just random hardware, and this looks like this is about the right size. So obviously I did not need this much elastic. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm basically going to be making a loop over here and then stitching across over here. So I'm just going to pin that in place. Okay, and what we would like to do is to make this nice and secure, so because there's going to be some pulling on here, is we're going to do a bar tack, which is going to be right across here. And a bar tack is a very small and narrow zigzag stitch. So I'm going to clear this area. I'm going to get a small zigzag and then a very small stitch. And you want to make sure that you do not sew through your pin or through your loop. And mine's probably a little not zigzaggy enough. There we go. Okay. So you can see that that is super secure. It's not going anywhere. You get on this side. Again, I'm doing this in a contrasting thread, just so you can see it. Use a matching color. Okay. Now I got a whole bunch of loose threads, and I'm going to clip off my elastic that doesn't belong there. Clip off my extra elastic that doesn't belong back there. Clip off my elastic at the center back. And where I can't see here on that black, I'll just do it right here. And we'll clip threads. I'll kind of clip threads every once in a while when it gets unbearable. Okay, can have house is getting cleaned on Tuesday, so she can pick all that up for me. Okay, so now we're ready to put our hooks and eyes on. Okay, so we're going to put our eyes over here. I want to open this up and try and get this sandwiched in there. Basically shove it all inside. And do your best to kind of pin that in place. Make sure that the fabric is all inside there. And at times, sometimes the power nut stretches, so this is a place where you can kind of cheat and just kind of shove maybe make a little pleat inside the power mesh. Or net, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so we're going to have that there. I'm just going to put this on with a straight stitch. I always start my hooks and eyes with a straight stitch. That way we get it in place. And then if your machine is really good about doing your bar tacks and everything, then we'll go back. So, oops, I still have a really tiny stitch. I don't need it that small. Okay, and both sides are attached, and then we have the hook side, which, there it is. Now the hook side is going to go over like this. Now this one's a little bit tricky, so what I'll do is I actually will stitch it twice. So if you look, it may be a little bit hard, and actually I can do it because my foot placement, but this one we've got just the regular foot placement. I'm just going to back stitch this down, kind of shove that in there, the power mesh. And then I'm going to flip that over, and it looks like I just need to trim a little bit down. flip that over and then do another stitch. Now if you see where if I come in here to sew, my needle is not going to be in the right place. So luckily I have the ability to move my needle. If you can, that's great. If not, you're going to have to play around with how to get this back side on. At least with the front side attached, you can always come back and hand stitch it. There we go. Our fitting band is now complete. So we've got that hook and eye. We've got our attachments so we can test a strap. So we can get this on the dress form. So the next step will be to put this on and see how it fits. I'm going to do an evaluation on my dress form so you can actually see where it should be on you. So we have just sewn our fitting band, and I want to just confirm to make sure that the band actually fits correctly. So I'm going to turn her around and I'm going to hook this on the loosest hook. And we do that because as basically as the elastic kind of wears and the fabric kind of stretches, we can slowly tighten it up. But we should be drafting it to the loosest one, which is what we did with that 2 inches of hair. Okay, so now I'm going to just position it, put it all in place where it should be. And if we look, if you notice, there's 2 different lines on here. The black line is the one that lines up to the wire, so we know that that is where it's supposed to fit. If for some reason this is not fitting you right around the breast tissue, then we need to go back and look at the band and the wire to make sure that you've actually selected the correct wire and band. If you are, let's say, in the red one, that could mean that and this is where the band is sitting, that means that the band in the wire is basically being pulled down on the body. And that could mean one of 2 things. It could mean that your band might be too tight, so it's forcing it down to a narrower part of your body. It could mean that the wire itself is too narrow and it's actually kind of forcing its way down. So we want to figure out exactly what the issue is with your wire. And if there's no issue with the wire, then we need to look at the band and see if the band is in the right place. So let's say for something like this, we have the wire in here and we really need it to sit over here. This could actually just be as simple as a single wire change for the band. So if this one's the 40, we could probably go to the 38 and it would fit right here just fine. And what that ends up doing to the band is that adds 5/16 of an inch over here, and it also on the cup, it's going to take away that 5/16 of an inch. So that way we move everything over and then we're housing what's in the breast tissue over here and not all the way over here. So just a single wire change could make all the difference in the world. Let's say that you do like the 36 wire, but you like how it fits a little bit wider. So let's say you want to spring it a little bit open. So you would actually use the next size up wire frame. So if you have the 36 but you like it a little bit sprung open, you can use the 38 wire band and do your fit sample for that. And what I would do is before you even start tackling the cups is to make sure that you've actually got the band that fits well. Because there's no sense in starting to work on the cups if the band is not in the right place. Because if you have an issue with your cup at that point, who's to say if it was the band or the cup? This way we eliminate all issues on the band first, and then we can tackle the cup. Thanks for watching. If you would like to have more content like this, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, or leave a comment below. Thank you very much.